Where No Man Has Gone Before is a Star Trek episode designed to make the TV network executives happy. It's got action, character, and high drama. And indeed, it was designed for just that purpose. NBC turned Gene Roddenberry down when he showed them The Cage, the pilot he produced for a new weekly science fiction series titled Star Trek. They said it was too cerebral. But in an unprecedented move, the network requested a second pilot, even though they'd spent the unheard of sum of over $600,000 for the first. Changes were made to the cast. Jeffrey Hunter had originally sat in the command chair, but it was decided a new captain was needed. Lloyd Bridges turned down the role. Jack Lord of Hawaii Five-0 fame was interested, but a deal couldn't be worked out. I had made a fair name for myself in a few movies and Broadway productions, been in a Twilight Zone and an Outer Limits, so they probably figured I'd had enough experience on other worlds to steer a starship. Coincidentally, I'd also worked with Leonard Nimoy in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Where No Man Has Gone Before convinced NBC to send the Star Trek crew on its 5-year mission to boldly go where no TV series has gone before. So here it is, what is considered to be episode #1 of Star Trek and my very first appearance as Captain James T. Kirk. There would be a lot of changes in future episodes from what you see here in terms of cast, sets, and costumes. Mr. Spock, the only character to be carried over from the first pilot, and just by the skin of his ears, no less, appears a bit more severe than usual. Eyebrows more upswept, bangs shorter, skin a yellow gold. Some familiar faces are still missing: Bones, Uhura, Mr. Chekhov. Here, Mr. Sulu is the officer in charge of life sciences. He would soon become helmsman. Kirk's relationship with Spock had yet to be defined. At one point, there's some downright nastiness as Kirk snaps, "Would you at least pretend for one moment that you have a heart?" In one scene, Kirk sees his own tombstone, which reads James R. Kirk, which, even though by now we all know his full name is James Tiberius Kirk. And lastly, the women in this episode all wear pants. That was going to change. Star Trek, to the appreciation of all the men on the set, in fact all around the world, would boast the shortest skirts on women of any regular series on television. Actually, the women were very tall and the skirts were very short. It could have been that the skirts were very long and the women were very short. It was very complicated. In any case, it looked good.
This is the captain speaking. The object we encountered is a ship's disaster recorder, apparently ejected from the SS Valiant almost 200 years ago.
Tapes are burned out, trying the memory banks.
We hope to learn from the recorder what the Valiant was doing here and what destroyed the vessel. We'll move out into our probe as soon as we have those answers.
Well, I feel a kind of a responsibility to the show and to the Star Trek history. I think this particular project that we're doing now is a major historical event, in my opinion. It's a sort of a fresh look, a fresh revisiting of the show in a way that it hasn't been seen in many years.
Autopsy report, sir. Each case showed damage to the body's neural circuit. An area of the brain was burned out.
And you feeling all right?
Yes, Mitchell too, except for his eyes. We're trying to find a reason for that now. And why out of our whole crew only certain people were affected.
New prints, footage restored, commentary. I think it's an important event, and I decided that I'd like to be part of it. I think that probably that's the reason that all of us from the original show are doing this, because it's meaningful.
Ah, yes, one of your Earth emotions.
It's almost a memorialization of the show in its finest form.
Dr. Dana feels he isn't that dangerous. What makes you right and a trained psychiatrist wrong?
Because she feels. I don't. All I know is logic. In my opinion, we'll be lucky if we can repair this ship and get away in time.
And I think for a lot of people who've been hearing about Star Trek for many years and never paid much attention, I think it'll be an eye-opener.
The character I played was Lieutenant Lee Kelso. And it was, as we say at all the conventions, the second pilot, the one that sold the show. I was a member of the crew, and the spaceship, the Enterprise, passes through a peculiar kind of force field that affects certain members of the crew, the two members that were affected, basically, were Gary Lockwood, who played Gary Mitchell, and Sally Kellerman. Things started to happen to him. His brain expanded at this enormous rate, and he was able to read volumes of books in one sitting. And then he was able to telekinetically move things, and he had enormous strength. Sally Kellerman played a doctor on the Enterprise who was very concerned about his health and about what was happening to him, and obviously she was beginning to fall in love with him. But she was also affected by this force field that we'd gone through, so she started to make certain changes too. I was the first person he killed because we were trying to keep him trapped on a small asteroid, and he, using his telekinetic powers and telekinesis and whatever, found out about it and strangled me with a cable. So if it hadn't been for Gary Lockwood, I'd probably still be on that series.
Gary Lockwood and I were like the Velos and Yolanda of television, and he and I were the guest star on this second pilot. So there we are, walking around the man-made lake. We're bumping into trees, slipping into the water, and no one is saying cut, and I'm getting starting to get just a small amount of the giggles. And now he reaches for the perforated peach, and he's going to rip it apart like this great god that he was, and hand me a piece while we had the scene, and it took him like, and they couldn't get it apart, and then rip, and still nobody's saying cut, you know. We had to wear lenses. We wore silver lenses in our eyes, and I had never worn glasses, and Gary hadn't, and he couldn't stand it for 1 second. He'd have them in for 1 second, and he'd get these lenses out of my eyes, you know, and this big screaming.
Stop it, Gary.
Morals are for men, not gods.
What do you know about gods?
I feel that I'm responsible for Star Trek's success because I was the guest star on the pilot. Yeah, I'd never thought of that. Gee, maybe it really was me.
Where No Man Has Gone Before takes us on a journey to explore the price of immortality and the cost of ultimate power. It has a familiar theme going back to the Greek tragedies. What happens when man plays God? Kirk watches as a close friend is transformed into something more than a human and something less than a man. Power does corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Tomorrow on Star Trek, the Sci-Fi Channel Special Edition.
Captain's log, stardate 1704.2, planet Psi 2000. The science party we were to have picked up has been found dead.
Could be some form of space madness we've never heard of.
Question. Could what happened down there to those people create any unusual danger to this vessel and crew?
No escape for you.
We have 14 minutes left.
Even if we were under full-scale attack, I couldn't move any faster, not maintain a safety factor.
Can't afford a safety factor.
Hey, Joey, put the knife down.
You let Joe, you just get less wet about it.
Spent a whole lifetime learning to hide my feelings.
Then, on Monday...
Captain's log, stardate 1672.9. Due to the malfunction of the ship's transporter, an unexplained duplicate of myself exists.
What can I do for you, Jim?
I said give me the brandy!
Come on, Spock, I know that look. What is it?
Well, our good doctor said that you were acting like a wild man.
Oh, Captain. You started hurting me. I had to fight you. Fisher saw you, too.
It wasn't me.
It was you, sir.
Captain Kirk! I'm Captain Kirk!
Hi, I'm George Takei, and you're watching Star Trek on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Mr. Spock.
out of you?
Join the man who was there, shot one, day one.
Spock, do something.
Leonard Nimoy hosts Star Trek, the Sci-Fi Channel Special Edition. Coming up next.
After NBC rejected the first Star Trek pilot, The Cage, they took the unprecedented step of giving Gene Roddenberry a second chance. Although closer to the final form, this second pilot still looks much different from the rest of the series. William Shatner is the new captain of the Enterprise. Spock is coldly logical. Noticeably absent is DeForest Kelley as Dr. McCoy. Jimmy Doohan and George Takei are present, but Nichelle Nichols would not come on board as Lieutenant Uhura until the next episode. Walter Koenig would not join the cast until the beginning of the second season. However, the one element that was there from the beginning was the human drama that was the hallmark of any Star Trek episode. This is a story about friendship, loyalty, and the dangers of power. It's a story that would be the first step on a journey that has lasted over 30 years and has truly taken us where no man has gone before. Gene Roddenberry's previous series, The Lieutenant, proved to be a fertile ground of talent when it came time to cast Star Trek. Nichelle Nichols appeared in episodes of The Lieutenant, and it's where I first met Gene as well. Now, the star of The Lieutenant, however, was Gary Lockwood, whom Gene picked to play Gary Mitchell in Where No Man Has Gone Before. Gary would later go on to appear as the ill-fated astronaut Frank Poole in another sci-fi classic, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Can power rob us of our humanity? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's an old adage that will be featured in many Star Trek episodes. With this second pilot tucked safely under his arm, Gene Roddenberry got what he so dearly wanted from NBC: a firm commitment to at least one season of this strange new show called Star Trek. Although this was the pilot that sold the series, NBC chose not to debut Star Trek with this episode. As much as it differed from the original pilot, NBC still considered Where No Man Has Gone Before too cerebral. Clearly, the network executives were more comfortable with monster stories. So the honor of opening the season went to The Man Trap, which was the 6th episode we filmed. One way or another, it didn't matter. Star Trek was born.